Welcome to the Unplugged and Unstoppable podcast. And I'm delighted today to welcome my guest, Mary Palmer, who is in the Caribbean today. And she's going to tell us all about her story, her life journey, and some of the things that have made her completely unplugged and unstoppable. And when I heard about your story, Mary, I just couldn't wait to get you on the podcast because the things you've been doing the last 5 years would blow most people away. And it's that mindset and how you've got here that I'm really curious about, because the podcast for me is about the people who've managed to overcome obstacles in life, and they've also unplugged from mainstream thinking, the absolute nonsense we're fed often on the media. In all walks of life, we get programs that run in our minds, and a lot of people get trapped. So this podcast will hopefully highlight some of the things you've done to become unplugged and then unstoppable. So welcome to the podcast, first of all, Mary.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. I'm delighted to be here. And I hope during this conversation, I'll get to hear more about Unplugged and Unstoppable as well, because I think it's a fantastic title and a fantastic endeavour that you're doing. And as you so rightly say, too many people seem to become trapped in whatever it is, their circumstances or whatever. And if, you and I and others can give some hope to people that you don't have to stay in that place, you don't have to be trapped in that, whatever it is, that mindset, then,
Absolutely.
that would be wonderful. So I'm really pleased to be here and lovely to see you.
Yeah, nice. You too. So take us right back, because we're going to blow people's minds about what you're doing and what you're doing in the last 5 years. Take us back to a place where you maybe could tell us about your first turning point. What set you on your path to being really determined about your future?
I think my first turning point was, and this is often the case for many people, these are life-changing events when I'd been married for 10 years and I finally decided that the time had come to leave my husband. And the situation was pretty dire. Through circumstances, through what had happened, I ended up leaving my husband with my two primary school aged boys, who I love dearly. They're grown up now, love dearly, and have turned out to be wonderful human beings, grown up men, despite having this crazy mum who does these crazy things. But anyway, that's probably another story. Anyway, after I'd left my husband, I was very kindly given shelter by the local authority where I lived, and they gave me a room in this social housing bed and breakfast, which I was very grateful for because I needed to make that great for my husband. But when I remember waking up in the morning, me and the boys, I think they were 6 and 8, I think, 6 and 8 years old at the time, and we'd shared this big sort of old creaky double bed in this council run B&B. And when I woke up in the morning, I looked up at the ceiling and I could see, sorry, I can feel goosebumps coming onto me when I think about that day. I could see cobwebs hanging down from the ceiling. I looked over at this sort of shabby wardrobe, and again it looked real as if it hadn't had a good clean for many years. But I remember thinking, before the boys had woken up, I remember laying there thinking, this is not going to be the life that I'm going to have, or that I'm going to have for my boys. Now, I mean, I had no idea, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I had no idea how I was going to make that change, and how I just had this absolutely burning desire and mission that just because I'd left my husband, that, we still couldn't have a really good life, and that I could make a really good life for the boys. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I mean, I won't take you through every detail, but suffice to say, I left my job, which my friends had said, can't do that. How are you going to achieve your dream if you leave your job? Well, in my mind, that was never going to give me the life that I wanted for me and my boys. So I took a risk, I jumped, I left my job. I actually went to university as a mature student. I got a degree in statistics. And lo and behold, I launched myself as a management consultant because I'd read that management consultants earn pretty good money. I really didn't even know what they did. I just launched myself as this management consultant. And slowly but surely over the years, I did carve out a career as a management consultant for myself. I took an MBA. I borrowed a lot of money to do all of this, but with the income that I was earning, I managed to pay all of that back, and I gave my boys a very good start in life. And I'd set myself a goal of 10 years to achieve a level where I'd feel that I'd accomplished what I set out to do, and I actually achieved it in 8.
Oh, well
and
done.
so that was the big turning point in my life when it dawned on me that if you set your sights on something that you can achieve, you can achieve something.
And was this, whereabouts in the UK were you?
At the time I was living in Devon.
Okay, nice.
And so, yeah, and I just a quick story, because you just reminded me that a few days after I'd left the B&B and I walked up and down the high street of the town where I was living, because it's touristy, knocking on tourist bed and breakfasts, asking people if they would take us in, given my circumstances. One kind lady really did. And she said, "Oh, I know you. Your son goes to the same school as my son. Yeah, we'll help you." So you need, sometimes you need that little bit of help as well. But I remember I saw an advert for an open day at Plymouth University, and I went along to this open day, not knowing what to expect, no idea. And this professor came up to me and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, well, what are you interested in or good at? And I said, "I love maths. I've always been really good at maths." He said, "I'm a professor of statistics. Would you like to join my course?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Yes, please." And so that's how that started.
Oh,
I got a degree
amazing.
in applied statistics. And that was how I managed to be taken on as an associate with a couple of consultancies, because that they didn't have people who had that sort of background.
Do you think, now it might go a bit esoteric here, do you think there was a prompting or something that nudged you in that direction or nudged them in your direction?
Nudge too, but
Like you describe it like they were almost chance encounters with these two people, one offering you somewhere to stay and one offering you on their course. It seemed to be a really synchronistic.
I think there's something about putting in the effort. So I
Okay.
literally, the next day after my original story, I took the boys to primary school. They were still at school. It was just coming up to the summer holidays. I dropped them off at school and I literally spent the day walking up and down the main street in the town, knocking on privately run bed and breakfasts,
Oh,
telling people
wow.
my story and
Oh,
saying,
wow.
"Would you be prepared to take me in for a short period of time while I can get myself organised?" And of course, I got a lot of "No, thank you very much. We're not interested." But as I say, after that persistence, I came across really, really lovely lady who said, "Yeah, your son goes to the same school as my
Oh, isn't
son."
that beautiful?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
glad I ask you again, because you left out the bit about knocking on the doors, which is
yes,
there's a lesson in that itself, in that there are good people out there. Obviously, some people it's not practical, but there will be someone who will welcome the request
yes,
to help.
yes.
That's
The same as
fantastic.
meeting, the professor of statistics, Professor Steve Shaw. I still remember his name. If I hadn't have seen that little advertisement to go to an open day at Plymouth University and plucked up the courage to go, not because I hadn't been to university at that stage in my life, I'd left school with, I think, what do we call them then? GCSEs.
Okay, amazing.
I'd done a little bit of studying with the Open University, but I'd never been to, university properly. And the Open University will hate me for saying that, won't they? But anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah. So was this a 3 or 4 year course to get a
Three-year course.
PhD? Yeah.
It
And
was a
he
3-year course.
amazing. So,
And it was really good. It was really interesting. So I dropped the boys off at school. Once I'd enrolled, I dropped them off at school,
mhm,
but I didn't have a car or anything then because of, my marriage. And I'd get the bus into Plymouth, and then I'd stay for as many classes as I possibly could before I had to leave to come back and pick the boys up
wow,
again.
wow, wow,
And then we kind of like do homework in the evenings together. So it
amazing,
worked, it worked. And
amazing.
really glad I did.
So just to give people some context, so I'm going to zoom forwards now. How many
Oh,
years?
yes, please do.
How many years have you were you a consultant? And should I say, have you been a consultant? Some other
Yes,
sector? Yeah.
yes. Now, this thing about serendipity, I managed to knock on that door of that lady who did say I met Professor Shaw and took statistics. I was just coming up to the end of my statistics degree course, and a lady that I'd met in the university who was doing a different course to me, she approached me one day and said, would you be interested in taking on a project, a statistic based on analysis?
Okay.
I doing some analysis. And I said, sure, because she said, because a friend of mine has said that their project lead has just left to go to Italy to do something else. And they're in the middle of a project looking at dementia services in the region. Would you be interested in picking it up? Well, I could say, well, the rest is history, because that was my first project. I completed that. He then recommended me to a colleague down the corridor from where he was working in the health authority. And so it went on. So for 6 years, I solely worked on projects within the healthcare. And also I did a little bit in the private sector as well. So yeah, I
Okay.
stayed being a consultant for 6 years and built a reputation within the health service for people that I was working with.
Okay. So are you still a consultant today, Mary?
No. So after
No.
six or
Okay.
7 years, I started to feel a bit dissatisfied because you do the work and then go on to another project.
Right.
And I said to a fellow consultant of mine, Andrew, I mentioned to him that I was getting a little bit dissatisfied with that. And he said, well, what you should do then is become an interim manager so that you're actually embedded within organizations.
Right.
And that's what I did from about 2007. I managed to get a role. There's so much that's happened in these years that I won't go into, but I
No.
managed to get a role with Wandsworth Primary Care Trust, as it was then, and I think I stayed with them for about a year as an interim manager, and and then I moved around. Sometimes the contracts were for 3 months, 6 months, a year, even 2 years. And I had a variety of roles with lots of different health organisations and local authorities, and I've interspersed that with a couple of years in Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
working in their health transformation, and now in the Caribbean, helping the health service here as a contract manager.
So do you mind me asking? Because we are going to say your age at some point, Mary. I'm going to say it anyway because you gave me permission. But how many years have you had in this career in total?
Well, I launched myself as a management consultant when I didn't even know really what it was in 1998. So
Okay.
it's coming up
Okay.
for, what's that? Well, it'd be coming up for 30 years
30
soon.
years. And like for those listening, like we're talking about a career path, and you've chosen to go into the Middle East, and now you're in the Caribbean, which sounds amazing. Tell us a little bit about the transfer off to the Middle East and your decision to go to where you are today.
Sure. So I had this really good career and I was very, very grateful for it. And it helped me to build the life for myself and for my boys that I wanted. But it was round about 2019, I'd become a little bit, I felt as if I was putting in a lot. And the health service is so big that I didn't feel as if I was really making a difference. The
Mhm.
main difference that I made was when I'd be leaving a role and somebody in the team that I'd be working with or whatever, managing, would write to me and say, thank you so much, Mary. You've really made a difference to how I work. So I knew that I was having an effect at an individual level, but
Mhm.
I didn't feel as if I was really having much of an impact on the sort of bigger level, on a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to look around for something else to do, and I thought I'd actually just finished a contract I had a contract in Birmingham, and it was January, and it was cold, and it was wet. So not the contract, I'm in Birmingham was.
Yeah.
and I put a message out to my LinkedIn contact saying, as we do, people who are in the same sort of business, just coming to my end of my contract. Does anybody know of anything might be going? And one person came back and said, what are you looking for? And jokingly, I said, somewhere hot that pays a lot of money. And somebody else came back and said, well, here's the name of a guy who's looking for people to go and work in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, I think this is, and after a year, anyway, long story short, then COVID came. I got the offer, couldn't travel because of COVID. And eventually in January 2021, I went over to Saudi and stayed there for 2 years. But that story about putting that message in, there's this thing about, I mean, even in the Bible, what is it? Ask and you shall receive, or,
Seek and
if
you
you
shall
don't,
find. Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
seek and you shall find. Sorry, for
Probably
getting
both,
that
actually.
wrong. But there
Probably
is
both.
something, there's something about that, isn't there? If you don't at
Definitely.
least ask, if you don't at least open your mind to the possibility,
Yes.
then, I could have said, in response to that person who said, what you're looking for, I could have just said, well, anything. But I said, in the back of my mind, somewhere hot that pays a lot of money, ideally. And lo and behold, no, I'm not saying that happens in every case. I'm just saying it's that mindset, isn't it, of being
Yes.
open
Yes.
to different things.
100%. So I've got to intercede because you went to the Caribbean after you started your other personal endeavor. And now I'm going to have to break the news. Guys, you won't believe it, but Mary is 72 years old and she is the open power. She does open powerlifting and she competes at the 71 to 72 kg weight class and has secured first place finishes in events such as the British Single Lift Championships, the WPC European Championships in Finland, and the WPC Amateur World Championships in Ireland in 2024. So that's last year. Perhaps you can tell me how did this occur? Because we'll end up in the Caribbean in a minute.
How did it occur? I still have to pinch myself, really. How on earth did it occur? Again, there's a similar vein, and maybe during your podcast when you're talking to people who have become unplugged to become unstoppable. I don't know whether you'll see that there is a theme here. Certainly, it seems to be a theme with me that I've always done something. I ran a London Marathon back in the 80s. I've always looked after myself as best I can, and not in a sort of fanatical way, but generally, all things in moderation, all that sort of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so I've always done something, but not really in a competitive sense or perhaps pushed myself to any sort of extreme. I did a London Marathon. I've done a few half marathons. I've done some other things like that, but quite sort of what I'd call low level stuff, but always something.
Okay.
And I was at the gym one day. Again, this was in 2019, must have been a big year.
Yeah.
But 2019, there I was in the gym as usual, on the cross trainer, dabbling is what I call it. Because I'm also, I'm not sure if I told you this, Robin, I'm also writing a book about this experience.
Are you? Well, I don't blame you. What amazing.
The subtitle is how I went from dabbling in the gym to becoming world champion powerlifter.
Amazing.
And I was dabbling, on the cross trainer, not barely breaking a sweat, but at least doing something. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this guy box jumping. I don't know if you know what that is, but for your listeners and viewers who don't know what it is, it's where you, from the standing start on the floor, you don't even take a run at it or anything. you jump up onto these stacked boxes, and he was doing at least to chest height from a standing start. No running. I went, you just do it from there. I can't do it. Anyway, I was so amazed. I thought, what am I doing on this cross trainer, just dabbling like this, which is where the title came from my book. And also out of the corner of my eye, I saw this guy standing behind me, and he said something like, "Can I help you?" And for some reason, it comes back to this serendipity, doesn't it? Or what? I don't know. Maybe when you tell me about your podcast and your Unplugged and Unstoppable, maybe you've got a name for it. So I turned around and I said, and I got off the cross trainer, and I said, "Are you a personal trainer?" He looked like a personal trainer, to be honest. You know, he was really looked very, very fit. And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Could you train me to do that, the box jumping?" And he said,
Okay.
"No, but I can train you to do something else." And we had a chat. I had a taster session with him. He told me about his experience. He competed at the highest level in powerlifting as well. I mean, for those who don't know, powerlifting are three main lifts. It's not like weightlifting. It's different to weightlifting. It's it's deadlifts, it's bench presses, and it's squats. Those are the three powerlifting modalities.
So you decided to start this at age 66. This is what's blowing my mind. Like, anybody listening to this is going to be going, what? Age is just a number. And listening to Mary, like, there is literally no excuse. Like, you've got that. So then what happened?
Well, I remember because we had to fill in, to get sign up to these training sessions. I had to tell him my age and all of that. And he was like, "Well, I don't believe you." But interestingly, I know he is very competitive, and I think he saw it as, I'm going to be the personal trainer who's trained the oldest person I know to become a competitive level powerlifter.
Wow.
He saw it as a challenge for himself.
It's lovely,
which was great. Yes. And so we started off, quite slowly. He had to improve my fitness, so that I wasn't dabbling on the gym anymore. I had to get a lot fitter than that. And then we started lifting. Within 6 weeks, I was lifting weights I didn't even know I could lift. And then that was in 2019. And towards the end of that year, he said to me, "I could train you if you wanted to actually compete in powerlifting." And I said, "Fantastic, let's do that then." And then unfortunately, again, COVID hit.
Right, okay.
The gyms closed, all that happened.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I got offered this role in Saudi Arabia that we talked about earlier.
Okay, so you went there.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So once the gyms reopened and we started training again, I had to say to him, "I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to take this opportunity in Saudi."
Okay.
And
so how long were you there for in Saudi?
2 years.
3 years.
The whole of 2021 and 2022. Yeah. And I kept up my fitness. I did what I call maintenance fitness. So just to make sure that I didn't lose too much of my strength. And when I came back in the end of 2022, we started training again in the January of 2023.
Brilliant.
And then I qualified to enter competitions at the end of 2023. And then 2024 is when I went into the British, European and World Championships.
Amazing. And so your personal best for deadlift is?
80 kilograms.
And for bench press?
Bench press is 40 kilograms.
Wow. And give us an idea. So 80 kilograms is around, it's getting on for 170, 180 pounds?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
It's the idea is that one of the benchmarks, if you like, is that if you can deadlift more than your own weight.
Yes.
Once I deadlift more than my own weight, then my personal trainer had said, "Yes, we can definitely go for competition now," because that's quite a milestone for anybody, any age, any weight. If you can deadlift your own weight, then you've started to really build up some, good level of strength. And even though my bench press is only 40 kilograms, actually women find bench pressing very difficult because their upper body,
Yeah.
generally speaking, men have a much stronger upper body than women do. But for some reason, I've got quite good upper body. And actually, a physiotherapist that I saw a couple of months ago, just for a minor tweak that I had, I said to him, can I still carry on doing my upper body while this is healing? And he said, if you never do any other upper body exercise in all your life, you'll still have the best shoulders that I've ever seen in a woman of your
Oh,
age.
that's amazing, isn't it? That's awesome. So I
Yeah,
guess I've got to ask, now you're not in the UK,
yeah,
in the Caribbean. You're obviously not
yeah.
with the trainer anymore, but
No,
are you keeping going with any of this lifting or just back at the gym again or
I am at the gym. In
okay,
fact, I was at the gym just before we started this podcast.
nice.
So, yeah, so I am at the gym. I've accepted that the compromise for living and working in the Turks and Caicos Island in the Caribbean, which is beautiful, is
Mhm.
that I won't be able to enter competitions this year.
Okay,
So,
right.
but that's fine because it doesn't mean I'm never going to compete again. You know, once my
No.
contract here finishes in a year, possibly 2 years, and if I'm back in the UK, I can pick up the training again. And the main reason for that, Robin, I don't know if you may not know, but Turks and Caicos Islands is a very small island. It's got a
Yeah.
population of about 40, 50,000,
Okay.
which doubles with tourism, but it means they can't sustain having a super duper gym, you know, that
No.
and if you're competing, you really need to have a gym that's got high quality equipment,
Yeah.
very well calibrated in terms of the weights and all of that. So there, I do have a gym that I go to, and it's pretty good, but it's not good
Okay.
enough for me to train the way I would need to if I was going to compete. So
Okay. So is this so you achieved what you did in 2024?
yeah,
When did you move to Turks and Caicos?
I flew out January 24th this year. So I've been
Okay.
here about 3 months.
3 months. Tell us about the little anecdote you gave me about when they were looking at your qualification to come in, your age, and all that stuff. What was that like? Can you remember they were kind of? Uh, was it that you didn't tell them your age because you didn't want to? You
No, I
didn't
had
want.
to tell them that
You had to
my
tell them
age.
your age, and then what
Well,
happened?
because to be able to work in the Turks and Caicos Islands, I mean, Saudi was quite similar actually. Um, you have to be able to demonstrate that you've got the right qualifications, that you don't have any health conditions that are
Hmm.
going to prevent you from doing the job, that you might be a burden on the state, and so on.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And for Turks and Caicos, there was even more than Saudi Arabia. I
Really?
had to have all of my childhood inoculations again because I haven't got electronic certificates of my childhood inoculations because they were done like even before we'd even thought of the internet. And so they wouldn't take my word that I'd had them done. I had to have them all done again.
Oh
So
my days.
it took 6 months. I had the interview in June last year, the offer in July, and I didn't fly out until January because I had to go through the work permit is so comprehensive. So I knew that they would see my age. You know, there
Yeah.
was a point all through this process. There was a little thing in my mind that thought, yeah, they said I passed that part of the health permit, but once they notice and they look and they go, "How old is she?" I'm going to get a message to say, "Thank you so much, Mary, but we've decided, you know, to withdraw our offer." And they never did. They never did, and I
That's
flew out.
amazing. So what I love about this is not only is I look at it like the universe is just opening doors for you because you've got this
Yes,
lovely way of like considering things a possibility, and
yes.
it just seems to happen for you, which is great. But the other thing is, I think we said before we came on camera, you love your job as well. You love it.
I do love my job. And actually, I've been very fortunate that sometimes there's a bit of a compromise. Maybe it's my training with weights that is the compromise with this, because I also say, although, you know, I think life is full of endless possibilities, that nothing's ever perfect. So, you know, I've compromised on not being able to compete this year, which is fine. But the role that I have is fantastic. I mean, I'm living in this beautiful island. I can look out of my, I'm looking now out of my, onto my terrace, palm trees, the sunshine, the pool, sorry, that I'm living in the complex as well. All of this stuff. And I'm getting paid, and the work that I'm doing is really interesting. I'm not going to go into details because, it's the
No.
technical details of the
Yeah,
contract
yeah,
and everything.
of
But
course.
it's absolutely fascinating, and the sort of health environment that I have never worked in before. I'll give you
Amazing.
an example of exactly this, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had to do Code Silver armed response in the hospital training a few weeks ago
Oh, wow.
because living in paradise, but there's still dangers,
Of course. Yeah, of
As
course. There's
I'm
a
not
lot
going
of
to.
wealth and poverty in the same few square
There
miles.
are,
Yeah.
there are. So, and of course, it's a small island, so it can be quite concentrated.
Mm.
So there's, it's real. It's such an interesting environment. So I did this. They put these trainings on, once a month or something. So you'll get a dozen people who haven't done it before. You turn up at this training, and it was absolutely fascinating. To be honest, I learned so much from this training. But I don't know if I'd mentioned to you when we've talked previously. I have a friend who I met when we were in Saudi Arabia together, and our contracts, I think they ended around about the same time in Saudi, and he is now working in Iraq. He's got a contract in Iraq, managing a
Okay.
hospital in Iraq.
Okay.
And I messaged him when I'd had this Code Silver training. He said, "Gosh," that's not quite the word he used, but he said, "Gosh, we don't even get that sort of training in Iraq."
Really?
So
And Iraq's way
yeah,
more unstable. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
So give us an idea of if someone's if you had someone in front of you who said they feel trapped in their job or their situation, what would you say to them?
If somebody has that feeling of being trapped in a certain situation, and it doesn't have to be as drastic like a marriage or a job, it could be trapped in, I don't know how to go out and meet, whatever. It could be something much smaller than that, or it
Mm-hmm.
could be something, sort of all life encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing for me is, if you feel trapped, or you feel, in my words, in my world, in the sort of the coaching business that I'm developing, for me, it's people who feel almost as if, that it's that old adage about, is this it? If people have that feeling of being trapped, maybe unfulfilled, maybe a little bit bored, maybe feel that they could do more, want to
Mm-hmm.
do more.
Mm-hmm.
It's if they can then just move that thought into, well, actually, I could do something different. I don't have to stay in this position.
Sure.
If you can just take your mindset to that thought, well, actually, I could probably, with a little bit of help, maybe a little bit of support, whatever it is, I could do something different. I think it's about having that mindset, because too many people, as you say, feel trapped.
Yes, and you just hinted that you're starting an online business. So Mary, again, you're living a really fulfilled life in an amazing location. You're doing a job that you love. You've hit the world champs, amateur world champs in deadlifting. What prompted you to start an online business? You know, forgive me for throwing a stereotype out there, but what, why pile on even more stuff like when your life is really full at the minute? And what's behind this decision?
Well, I could ask you the same question, couldn't I? I could say,
Yeah,
Robin, which I absolutely love the idea of this podcast that you're doing, this Unplugged and Unstoppable. What's prompted you to do
yeah,
that? Because I
okay,
know, from our past conversations, you have had and you still have a successful career. Why on earth would you want to go and do this?
It's a really good question. For me, it's there were two moments. Like in about 12 years ago, I was corporate, fed up, tired, exhausted, jaded by it all. And it didn't light me up at all. So it didn't give me a purpose in the morning. I had to get my purpose elsewhere. It was football, training with the kids, or it was, taking kids on nice holidays, or aiming for something that was more family based. And I love cooking, and I was piling my energy into my passions.
Yeah,
But as a provider in a family of four kids and a wife, it becomes harder and harder to justify to yourself. And I had to do mental gymnastics just to say, I've got to put one foot in front of the other and justify being in a job I don't enjoy anymore. And I was resenting the time I was giving up for a 9 to 5. And at the time, work from home wasn't really a thing. So you had to commute to Cheltenham from Bristol, which is about 45 to an hour there and back. And I just needed something else. So at the time, I actually found a side hustle in property and real estate. I'm a broker. I broke deals. So I find a developer who wants some money, and I match him up with an investor who's got some money, and
nice.
we do business plans, and we negotiate, and I get paid when the deal gets done. And both of them appreciate my efforts. But because property development is it can be a very choppy business. There's an awful lot of things that go on in the transaction that make it
Yeah,
frustrated and fall away. You really do need resilience. So all of this time I've been doing personal development, looking at little business opportunities on the side. What else can I do? So I'm still in the day job and doing real estate, and it was tiring me out as well. It was mentally draining.
yeah,
And I got to a point last year when I just thought enough's enough. I've got to find something else. And something popped up on my YouTube, and the rest is history, really. I started building a business around things I love, which is getting curious about people's turning points and showing others that it's possible. And if people want to start an online business, they can. So, and they can do it around something they love. So that's why I'm here with this business, really. I'm got lots of great ideas for it that we can cover if you want to, but that's the reason why.
yeah. So there was a sort of a turning point for you
Oh
where
yeah,
you decided that you'd had enough.
enough's enough. It was like exhaustion and just being completely fed up of it all.
Yes, yes. And had you had any experience of, speaking on stage, interviewing people?
A little bit, yeah. I'd done some content creation around the 2018, 19, 20, 21 period. And I was doing things that are around raising awareness of public issues. So,
All right.
things that things that might sound a bit controversial, but I would call it raising awareness of things that were concerning me at the time.
Yeah,
So I did learn to do podcasts. I did learn to do YouTubing. And instead of taking all these kind of awareness on the things that are wrong in the world, I thought, right, like I need to transfer this energy into channeling people who feel black pilled, I call it. Like they've taken all the red pills. They've taken all the red pills. They've seen what all the issues are, and now they just fed up of being black pilled. So this show is the antidote to that. Like it turns your mindset back into things that can be done. Like your good self when you're saying life is full of possibilities.
yeah,
Um, and that's the essence of the show, really. It's about becoming a bit more positive in your outlook, because you can get lost down these rabbit holes and you can become really stuck, not seeing a way out, or feeling more hopeless and powerless. Well, that's not going to help anyone. You need to actually bring back your personal power. Take it back. And
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, the things that you've talked about your journey, there's definitely some overlap, because it's about setting an intention and looking at the world as full of possibilities, and then going after it.
Yeah.
And then, like you knocking on the doors, someone will actually say yes in the end, because I think the
Yes.
universe responds to that. I think it definitely does. It's like a manifestation technique almost, for those that go like the term.
Yeah. For me, it's that there is a higher power. I don't know what we call it. Some people call it God, some call it manifestation, some call it the
Yeah,
abundant universe. But I do believe there is a higher power if you can
absolutely.
open your mind to this possibility. But it's
And
interesting what you were saying about the podcasting, why you were saying that, and how people can get trapped in. Perhaps there's two sides of the coin to the internet. There's one side of the coin, I think it's the red pill, which is it's all doom and gloom
yeah,
and everything's dreadful. And for younger people, particularly younger women, comparing themselves to these people who look fantastic but probably lead dreadful lives, and maybe aren't happy in themselves. So there's all of that negativity. But on
mm-hmm.
the other hand, on the other side of the coin, the internet gives people like you the opportunity to
Yeah.
to to suggest this idea that you can become unplugged from all of that and become unstoppable in what you want to achieve.
Fantastic. And like, we're both on a journey here, Mary. We're young in our online business. Like, we're getting our websites ready and things like that.
Yeah,
But tell the audience about who are you trying to serve, and what kind of offerings do you think you might be preparing
yeah,
for?
yeah. So I've had this idea for a few years actually, but the training, Saudi Arabia, other things got in the way. But it's been on the back burner because I have been, well, a lot of my friends say that I'm just lucky. And I am very fortunate, is the word that I would use. I'm very fortunate that I knocked on the door of that lovely lady and she said yes. And I met Professor Shaw, and that's happened to me throughout. People in Turks and Caicos didn't seem to mind that I'm 72
That's
or whatever
amazing.
it is, you know. So 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 I think that yes, I have been very fortunate. But what I would like to do through my work is to be able to say to other people, particularly who I can relate to and perhaps can relate to me, is women of a certain age,
Yeah,
that they may have a sense of dissatisfaction about something. And I'm certainly not advocating you do what I do. I'm not advocating women leave their husbands or go and travel, whatever it is. It's
yeah,
for those people to decide. For those women who perhaps have a sense of they want to do more, they'd like to do more, do something different, whatever it is, but just don't know where to start. They don't know how to start. And maybe
okay.
they feel that that road is full of risks and failures. And from my experience, what I'm hoping is that just from my experiences, and we had time, I could probably tell you about several other turning points that I've had during my life, which have been fantastic. That
Okay.
you can swallow whatever color pill it is if you've got that turning point to
Yeah.
actually make that change, and that I'm
Awesome.
not just saying, oh look, I've got a coaching program that will help you do that. What I'm saying is I've done this myself
Absolutely.
on
Yeah.
many occasions. I've done it myself. I am living proof that if you can have just a slight change in your mindset, a slight opening of yourself, that there might be more to this than what you can just see,
Beautiful.
then you can do something different. And I am living proof and continue to be living proof
Absolutely.
that is true.
Well, you should come back on and in the near future when you've got a course up and running. But this for those listening, like, this is the excitement that both Mary and I share, that we're building a future that is going
Yeah,
online. Which, let's face it, the world is all online now, and even education itself is under threat, because like everyone's doing their homework with Chat GPT. They can't education itself is got
Yeah,
has got to
yeah,
change massively, and a lot of it will go online. And
yeah,
with the advent of AI, I'm sure that a lot of complete courses will be stood up by AI and bespoke as well. So, you know, children of the
yeah,
future will probably go, I want this, this, and this, and it'll be downloadable.
yes. But nothing will replace person to person interaction.
Absolutely. And
I really don't. That
I
rich
do,
conversation. Sorry, Robin, but yeah,
yeah, I do feel that for those who are getting some awareness of AI as well, that there is a sense of, oh my, there's fear, you know, there's a bit of fear. What's happening to my future? Are there jobs under threat? And again, that's a kind of need. I think, you know, no matter how old you are, where you've been in life, what experience you've got, you can reinvent yourself and you can pivot. And so my tribe in this podcast are for those that have maybe taken red pills, maybe even got black pilled, but they need some hope, they need a change, and they need
yes,
some energy. And you know,
yeah,
Mary, you absolutely personify that, and it's so wonderful to learn about your journey, because I can guarantee you everyone watching and listening will be thinking, uh, I'm going to do something about this now. So, you know, do you have a brand name? Do you have a brand name
I
yet?
do. I do. I'm just about to launch my website. My
Okay,
website name is boldafter50.net.
fantastic.
So
So boldafter50.net, all one word.
all one word. The 50 is 50. So
Okay.
it's boldafter50.net. That's my website, which I'm hoping to launch in the next few weeks. So
Fantastic. Well,
and
we'll look out for that and put your link
great,
in the show notes. And no doubt,
fantastic.
if you can give me an email address when it's all set up, I'll also include that
That would be
in the show
amazing. Thank
notes.
you so much. That would be great. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. So
It
if
feels very exciting, as I'm sure you are, about your podcasting, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and that reaching out to people to. I think part of it, perhaps part of what we're both doing, is saying you're not alone in this. There are other
absolutely.
people who want to do different things.
And look, it's also, you've got to be real about this. Like, there's nothing that irritates me more than people who've got the posh cars, the flash cars, and the wads of cash, and they go, "Look at me." Well, actually, that's not helping me whatsoever. What I like is a blueprint and a roadmap, and actually a
Yeah,
community, which also helps. And you know, we found each other by being in the same community,
that's right. Yeah,
and you know, that moral support is so important. And like, everyday people can make a difference and change their life and make a difference.
yeah, that's
So
right.
if I was to say, if you had, now thinking about your boys and thinking about the world and some of the things that you've done in the past, I'm going to finish up with two questions. But before we do, let's have a quick rapid fire. Have you read a book that changed your life? And if so, can you name it?
Interestingly, I'm not a great reader,
Any material that you've digested
but
or
but the one book. And it doesn't really, why I'm pausing is because it doesn't really, in some ways, it doesn't really fit with the conversation that we've had. But some years
okay.
ago, um, one of my sons who reads endlessly and has done ever since he was like, pick up a book,
Mm,
um, he buys me books to read, which is
nice.
lovely. And he gave me 1984 one
Oh
year.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously I can read and I it's strange to say, but I really loved it. I loved it because, in a way, it showed the antithesis to what I want the world to be like,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
why I'm positive, and why I want to give people positivity if they're open to it. And I really do love that book, which sounds really strange,
Not at
um,
all.
because it made such a difference to me because it's quite a short book, isn't it? It's not
Yes.
like it's not War and Peace, which I've also read actually, but it was written so well that it actually gave me a sense of hope. It gave me a sense of hope because um, it doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to be like that.
100%. It's definitely, like you say, a stark contrast to what it could be. I must
Yeah.
say, George Orwell was almost telling the future a little bit, but
Yes,
like
yes,
it's like he had the blueprints to
yes,
what has later transpired. But focusing less on that, though, I do get your reason for choosing it, because it's almost like the blueprint for what you just don't want to be,
exactly,
and
exactly.
it's giving you that awareness of
Yeah,
what to look out for, a warning shot.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we don't have to accept that. We don't have to be like that. And so that's why, in some ways, it may seem an odd choice for me.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, that made a
Okay.
huge impact on me when I read that.
Fantastic.
And
So,
yeah,
what one skill would you say you believe people should learn?
I'm not sure if you describe it as a skill, but having an open mindset, at least, you know, try not to have a closed mindset. Try to open your mind to the good things that are around you, to the
Absolutely.
possibilities,
Hmm.
to the things that are wonderful in your life, even though things may be tough. You know, I think we can all see things in our lives that are good. So I think for me, it is about the mindset. I'm not sure, Robin, whether you class that as a skill.
Oh no, definitely. Because once you start practicing gratitude,
Yeah,
you do actually feel a lift spiritually, and it does set the scene for the day. So if you can try and do it in the morning, it does definitely help you as part of a practice or a meditation or something like that.
I
So,
agree.
what habit would you say is a good habit for people to start then on this journey? Let's say they've just saw this podcast for the first time. They're not in a great place, but they now heard you saying what you said. What practice would you say is a good starting point?
I would say get a little journal, a piece of paper, a
Okay.
pen, and start to write down how you're really feeling about things.
Okay.
Just write it down. When you could be, I don't know, doing the housework or getting ready for work and thinking about these things, but rather than just think about them, start to write things down, because I think
Okay.
writing things down is a great way of opening yourself to it being a reality rather than just thinking about it.
Very good. Yes.
So that's something that I do. I mean, I know, we've got all sorts of technology that can help us with note taking and keeping records and all those sorts of things. But for me, nothing beats the actual act of writing. And I'm sure there's research, you may already know this research
Yeah.
that about how different it is, what a different experience it is for the brain to actually convert things to a written word.
Yeah, thinking on paper, I guess it just helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, so as we get towards a close on this podcast, is there something you think I should have asked you that I haven't asked you yet?
Well, there's lots of questions that I'd love to ask you. Maybe one day we can do a reverse,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can be my subject, because there's so much more I'd like to know about where you want to go with this and
Oh,
your
okay.
project of podcasting. I just think it's such a fantastic thing. And I know there are lots of podcasters out there, but I think the approach and the sort of values, which we haven't really talked about, but the values that you've got around your podcasting are really interesting and different, I think, to a lot of others that are out there.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, in answer to your question, where I'd like to go with the business is to set up retreats for people who want to unplug, figure out what they want to do, and then come back unstoppable. So retreats in Thailand, where my son and his lovely wife and little baby daughter, my he lives in Thailand and he's just about to move to Koh Samui. So maybe next year we'll have a retreat in Thailand. I'd love to do one.
Fabulous.
I'd love to do one in my cousin's yoga retreat, which is already set up, and it's been voted the top yoga retreat in Europe many times. And that's in
Where's that? Sorry,
Portugal.
in Portugal. Lovely.
It's about an hour east of Lisbon,
Well,
and
keep
maybe
me on the list, please. Keep me on your
yes,
mailing list because that would definitely appeal to me.
fantastic. Well, I'd love that because I want to attract people who would love to pivot, but they've got some get up and go. Or you'd like to learn how to get some get up and go, and these retreats are often a place to just disconnect and figure out what it is you want to do. And if you already have got a burning mission and a passion and a business, it will be a great place to network, feed off of one another, brainstorm ideas together, and feel like
Yeah,
that you're in a safe place to do that.
yeah, sounds fantastic. I think you're right. Whatever stage of development, whether it's a business or whatever it is, it's still great. We still like to have those times when we're with people,
Yeah.
just to, like-minded people, just to engage and connect with people.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe I'll offer some coaching too, but I'm just putting together a few things. And I love the sound of
Yeah,
you
yeah.
writing a book as well. That's awesome.
Yes. Well, fortunately, my son, who gave me 1984 and has read endlessly and still reads endlessly, he is in the creative arts, so he is a creative, and
Is he?
I know that he's going to help me with the editing of the book, so which is fantastic. So,
Brilliant.
and he's the one who's encouraging me to keep going with the book.
Well, we must connect. I've got some notes on KDP you might want to have, which is Kindle desktop publishing.
Oh, right.
That you
Okay.
can
Right.
launch a book on Amazon. So
More to learn.
definitely more to learn. Yeah. So last two questions then, Mary. You've got a microphone to the world, 8 billion people in front of you. What message would you like to give to the world?
It is never too late. It's never too late to make a change, whether it's big or small, whatever it's concerning, it is never too late. And you can always make a change. You asked me earlier about what question haven't you asked me, something like that.
Yeah.
And because people often ask me, when are you going to stop, Mary? That's a
Mm.
question that I get asked quite a lot. Yeah, because it's tradition, isn't it?
There's a
I'm
limiting
loving.
belief as well. Mm.
Yes, it's tradition, and why haven't I retired yet? And all of those sorts of things. That kind of traditional thing. But I don't intend to stop. You see, I don't intend to stop.
100%.
Um, I, I'm not much of a royalist, but when our late Queen died, I did ask myself what I could take away from her passing, and it was that she worked up until the day she died. And that's what I want to do. And so, my message, if I'm giving a message, is it's never too late. Don't worry about what age you are. Young, maybe going through what we might call middle age, later age, whatever it is never too late to make a change. Never.
Amazing. And final question to your boys and your loved ones around you. What would your parting shot be to them? What would you say to them?
To my lovely sons, Ben and
Mm,
Todd,
yes.
I would say thank you so much for turning out to be wonderful, caring human beings, which they are, despite having a mum who's continually done these crazy things, and has perhaps not been the most traditional type of mum. So I am so, so grateful to them. They know
Yeah,
this anyway. I am so grateful to them that they have turned out to be such wonderful, caring, and supportive human beings. When
that's
I
one.
said to them, I've got a job in Saudi Arabia, what do you think? Go, mum, go. That's their attitude. I think they just
Awesome.
want to get rid of me, actually. But, I am truly grateful to them for being such wonderful human beings and supporting me in all the crazy things that I've done.
Well, we fully support you in your latest crazy mission, Mary. And just give us your website one more time.
It's boldafter50.net.
Fantastic. And we'll put all your contact details underneath when we release
Fantastic.
the
Thank
show.
you.
It's been an absolute delight talking to you, Mary. And
to you, Robin. Thank you so much for having me.
you're very welcome. So listen, folks, if you are inspired by Mary's message and you want to get in touch, you've got the details. All of that will be in the show notes. Until next time, you know where to come for your next episode and slice of becoming unplugged and unstoppable. Until next time, folks, take care and see you again soon.
I feel a shift now, I've got to move off the floor, 'cause I'm unplugged and unstoppable. No force could ever break this mold of titanium. You can't shake me, oh, 'cause I'm unplugged, unplugged. I'm unplugged, unplugged. I'm unplugged, unplugged and unstoppable. Yeah, Now I'm reborn into a new life. I choose my new life and leave my old one behind. Yeah, 'cause when I open my eyes now to look, I see so much more. I feel a shift now and I've got to move off the floor, 'cause I'm unplugged and unstoppable. No force could ever break this mold of titanium.